Hello everyone, this is part 12 on how to make a tower defense game in Scratch, and this is the final part of this entire series. In this video, I'll be finishing up the game by adding player lives, a game over screen, a trash can to remove turrets, infinite waves, and I will also fix some important bugs. So we have a lot to cover in this final video, but I'll try to explain everything the best I can and make it all organized. But anyways, let's get started. So first off, I want to create some player lives because I want the player to lose if too many enemies reach the end of the map. So to do so, let's create a lives counter sprite. So I am going to select this cash counter sprite right here, and then right click, duplicate it. And now we should have our new sprite. And I'm going to call this something like lives counter. Okay, and this sprite is going to show the player lives. And I also want to draw a heart costume in this. So I'm going to go to costumes. And then I'm going to go over here and paint a new costume. And to create a heart image, it's actually super simple. First, you need to select this rectangle tool. And then I'm going to drag while holding the shift key down. And this creates a perfect square. Okay. And then I am going to center this. And then I'm going to rotate this while again holding shift. And then this allows me to create a diamond. And now I'm going to select the circle tool and drag while holding shift. So this creates a perfect circle. And I'm going to create a circle and make it the same width as this diamond. So now I can just select the circle and then copy it. So Control C, Control V, and then put it on the other side like so. All right. And as you can see, now we have a simple heart icon. Okay, so now I'm going to name this heart and also drag this on the top of the costumes. So I'm going to drag this to the very top. Okay, so now inside of the code, of course, for our player lives, we need a lives variable. So let's go to variables. And then I'm going to create a new variable and call this something like lives. And then click OK. And when the flag is clicked, I'm going to first set lives to something like, let's say 20. Okay. And now under this when I start as a clone, I'm going to change this to length of lives and also make it switch costume to letter digits of lives instead of cash. And if I change this X position to something like 0 and then click the green flag, then as you can see, we have our lives counter right over here. So now I'm thinking of making this lives counter go on the top and in the middle of the screen, like right over here. And I also want to show the heart icon to the left of it. So to center this number, I'm going to have to make some changes in the X right over here. So first off, I want to take this digits times 12 out of the plus and then remove the plus. And I want to go to operators and drag a minus operator. And then I'm going to drag this digits times 12 on the left side and drag this inside of the go to X. And I want this number to always be in the middle, no matter if we have like 20,000 lives or just 2 lives. So to do so, we have to grab a length of operator and then go to variables and grab our lives variable, drag it inside of there. And then we have to go to operators, grab a multiplication operator, and drag the length of on the left side and multiply it by the same number that we have here, which is sort of like our spacing between digits. So I'm going to put in 12. And then we have to grab a divided by operator, put this on the left side, and divide it by 2. And then lastly, let's drag this on the right side of the minus. Okay, so now if we try it out, I'm going to first make the Y go up a bit. So let's try 160. Okay, maybe like 157. All right, so as you can see, our 20 is now centered horizontally. And if I try increasing the lives to something like 2000, then as you can see, it's still centered. And if I make it like a super large number, like this, then as you can see, it's still centered. So it works. All right, so I'm going to change this back to 20. And now we want the heart icon. So to do so, I'm going to go to looks and grab a switch costume to and drag this right before the repeat So I'm going to switch costume to heart. And then I'm going to go to control and create a clone of myself. And then I'm going to go back to looks and switch costume to costume 0. And now inside of this one I saw as a clone, I want to go to control and grab an if else. And I want to first check if the costume name, so go to looks again, grab a costume number block, put this on the left side, and change this to costume name is equal to heart, or whatever you named your heart costume. Then we want to grab a show block, and pretty much I want to also make it go to this. So I'm going to right click and duplicate it, and then drag this after the show. However, I want this heart icon to go a bit to the left of this number. So I'm going to go to operators and grab a minus operator and try something like minus 10 and drag this entire thing to the left, and then drag all of this back inside of the X. All right, so now I can drag all of this right over here, and then I'm going to drag this other if else that we used to have inside of the else, and I'm going to also drag this go to XY inside of this else. So right over here, and now we should be fine. So if we try it out, then as you can see, we have our heart icon. However, it's a bit large right now, so I'm going to go to the costumes and I'm going to shrink it a bit. So I'm going to select the entire thing. All right, so now we have our heart icon and we have our entire lives counter. So now we want the enemies to decrease the player lives if they reach the end of the map. So inside of our enemy sprite, let's find the enemy destroyed block, and I'm going to go to control and grab an if else statement. And just to make everything simpler inside of here, I'm going to go to operators and grab an or and check if item clone number of enemy health is less than 1, or if touching edge, then we want to of course destroy the enemy. However, we don't want to give the player cash if the enemy reaches the edge of the map. So let's take this out, and then let's take this change cash by drop cash amount out, and let's drag this or back inside of here. And now inside of this enemy destroyed block, I'm gonna put this if else over here. And inside of the if, I'm gonna check if not, right click, duplicate this touching edge. So that means if the enemy is destroyed, then of course we want to change the cache. And we also want to switch costume to costume 4 and then wait 0.05 seconds. So this essentially is the popping costume that it switches to, which is this one. So we want to make the enemy sort of like explode after its health is less than 1. And then inside of this else, that means if the enemy did reach the end of the map, then we want to change the player lives by -1. So let's go to variables and change lives by -1. All right, and then after the if else, we want to delete the clone. Okay, so now if we try it out, then if the enemy reaches the end of the map, then the player lives should decrease by 1. So let's see. Right now we have 20. And once they reach the end of the map, then as you can see, our player lives decreases by 1 and the enemies disappear. All right, cool. So now, of course, we want to make it so that if we have 0 lives left, then a game over screen appears. Because right now, the game does not end once our lives is less than 1. So to create a game over screen, let's create a new sprite. So go over here and then paint. And I'm going to create a simple sign. All right, so now I have my game over sign. And I'm also going to create a black screen that sort of fades behind it. So I'm going to create a new costume over here. And I'm going to simply use the rectangle tool to draw a black rectangle. So fill, black, and we should be good. Okay, so I'm going to name the game over sign game over, and I'm going to name the black rectangle dark background. All right, and now let's go back to the code. And inside of the code, I'm going to first go to events and drag a when flag clicked. Then of course, we want to hide this sprite. So grab a hide. And we want to show this game over screen when the player lives is less than 1. So in the lives counter sprite, I'm actually going to check in here. So I'm going to grab a control and grab a forever. And I'm going to put this right after the repeat 10, create clone of myself. And I want to check if the player lives is less than 1. So go to operators, grab a lesser than, and go to variables, check if the lives is less than 1. Then we want to go to events and broadcast a new message. So I'm going to drag a broadcast and change this to new message, and then type something like game over. Okay. And after that, I want to go to control and drag a stop all block and change this to stop other scripts in sprite, and also stop this script. So now inside of the game over screen, by the way, I'm going to name this game over screen. Okay. So inside of this sprite, I want to check when I receive the game over message. Then of course we want this sprite to show. So I'm going to go to looks and grab a show. And then I'm going to go to motion and grab a go to XY block and change this to 0, 0. Okay. And then I'm going to go to looks and switch costume to game over. So that is the game over sign right here. And I want the sprite to sort of fade in instead of instantly just appearing when the game was over. So to do so, let's grab a set color effect to block. And I'm going to change this to set ghost effect to. And first of all, we want the sprite to be invisible. So that means the ghost effect has to be 100. And then we want it to slowly fade in. So let's go to control, grab a repeat, and I'm going to go back to looks and grab a change color effect by block, put it inside of the repeat, and I'm going to change this to ghost. And let's try like repeat 25, change ghost effect by -4. Or actually, I want the sign to be a bit see-through, so I'll change it by -3. And oh yeah, we also want the sign to go to the front layer. So let's drag a go to front. And now if we click this message, then as you can see, it looks like that. So the sign sort of fades in. So now we have the sign fading in as our game over screen, but I also want this dark background to also fade in. So to add the dark background, I'm going to go to control and then drag a create clone of myself block. And I'm going to drag this right after the go to XY. All right. And now to make the clone also fade in, I'm going to drag a when I start as a clone. Then pretty much I want to do this. So I'm going to right click, duplicate, and I want the clone to switch costume to the dark background costume. And we want the dark background to go behind this game over sign. So after this go to front layer, we also want to make it go back 1 layer. So grab a go forward 1 layers block, put it right after the go to front layer, and change this to go backwards 1 layer. And now I think everything should be okay. So if you try it out, then as you can see, we have the game over sign with the dark background. And I think the background is a bit too dark. So I'm going to try something like repeat 30 and then change ghost effect by -2. Okay, so let's try it out again. And something like this. So I think that looks fine. And now once the game is over, we want everything in the game to stop. So to do so, let's go inside of every sprite. Let's start with the enemy. And we have to drag an event and drag when I receive, game over. Then we have to go to control and stop other scripts in sprite. So now we can just do the same thing for all of these other sprites. So let's check the line sprite And there's nothing in here, so we don't need to use this block. But let's drag this into the turret sprite. And this way it stops all of the code in here. And I'm also going to drag this in the turret range sprite, and also in the base sprite, and also in the turret collider sprite. Alright, so we stop all of the scripts in all of these sprites except for this game over screen sprite, because we want it to sort of fade in. So now if we try this out, then we should have a proper game over screen. And before we try it out, actually, I'm going to set the lives to 1 just to make the player lose the game quicker. So inside of the lives counter sprite, I'm going to set it to 1 and try it out. All right, so I'm going to add a turret in here just to test it. So we have the turret. Let's also open the shop just to test if the game over screen actually stops everything. And once the enemy reaches the end, then as you can see, the screen fades in and we can't do anything. All right, cool. And by the way, you can add your own buttons and stuff like that if you wanted to, but for this game, I'm just going to leave it like this. All right, so I'm going to go back to the lives counter sprite and change the lives back to 20. And I'm going to also go to variables and hide this lives variable. All right, and now we have the player lives and game over screen completely working. And now I want to add a cancel option when the player buys a turret, because right now, when the player buys a turret from the shop, the player must place the turret. So I'm thinking of adding like a trash can icon near the bottom of the screen over here that shows up if the player is currently placing a turret. So to do so, I'm going to first create a new sprite, and I'm going to simply create a trash can icon using the line tool. All right, so I finished drawing my trash can icon, and now I'm going to go to the code, and I'm going to first grab a when flag clicked, then hide it. And now whenever we click on this shop and click on a turret, then we want to show the icon. So to do so, let's go inside of the turret icon sprite. And once a turret icon is clicked, that means we want to show the trash can sprite. So I'm going to go to events and drag a broadcast new message. And I'll call this something like show trash can. Okay. And I'll drag this right after this broadcast close shop. All right. And then inside of this trash can sprite, I'll just call this trash can. Then we want to drag a when I receive show trash can. Then of course, let's make it show. And I'll make it go over here, so bottom right of the screen. That is, as you can see, x -17 and y -147. So let's grab a go to and make it go to x -117 and y -147. All right, and I think I'll make it a bit smaller, so I'll set the size to something like 80, maybe 90. Okay, I think 90 is fine. So I'll drag this. Okay, and I'm thinking to make it so that if the turret is hovering over the trash can, and if we click, then the turret disappears. So to do that, I'm going to go to control and grab a for loop. And let's check if, go to sensing, touching the mouse pointer. So if the trash can is touching the mouse pointer, then let's make the trash can a bit larger. So I'm going to set size to, let's make it 100. And I'm also going to make it a bit brighter. So let's grab a set color effect 2 block and change this to set brightness. And let's set its brightness to something like 30. Okay. And I think just to make it a bit better, I'm going to go to costumes and duplicate this costume. And for the second costume, I'll make the lid go a bit like up like this. All right, and I'll call this one closed, and then this one with the lid open, I'll call this one open. And let's go back to the code. So if it's touching the mouse pointer, then I'll switch its costume to the open costume. And actually, instead of an if, let's change this to if else. So let's drag this into an if else. All right. And then inside of the else, I'm going to make it go back to all of its original like sizes and brightness and stuff like that. So else, if it's not touching the mouse pointer, then let's make the trash can set size to 90, which was my original size, and switch costume back to closed, and set its brightness to 0. Okay. And then inside of the if touching mouse pointer, we also want to check if the mouse is down. So grab an if, and inside of here, let's check if, let's go to sensing, mouse is down, then we want to remove the turret. So let's go to events, and let's broadcast a new message. So broadcast, I'm going to select new message, and I'll call this one remove turret. Okay. And I'm also going to hide this sprite. So instead of just dragging a hide, I'm actually going to broadcast a new message, and I'll call this hide trash can. Okay. And I'm going to go to control and grab a wait until not mouse down. So go to operators, grab a not, and go to sensing, grab a mouse down. Okay. So now inside of events, we want to check if the trash can sprite received the hide trash can message, which it does once we click on the trash can. Then of course, we want to hide it. And also I'm going to go to control and stop other scripts in this sprite. So it just stops the show trash can script. All right, so let's try it out. And if we select a turret, then as you can see, we have the trash can icon. And if we hover over it, it switches costume to the open costume. And if we stop hovering over it, then it switches back to the closed costume. All right, cool. However, as you can see, once we place down a turret, the trash can still appears, but we want to make it hide. So inside of the turret sprite, once it receives place turret, which means that the turret is placed, then we want to go to events and broadcast hide trash can. All right, so let's try it out. So once we place on a turret, then the trash can hides, like so. All right, and I also want the trash can to go in front of the turret. So inside of the trash can sprite, I'm going to go to looks and grab a go to front layer and put it inside of this forever loop. All right, so let's try it out. If we have a turret and hover over the trash can, then as you can see, it does its little animation. All right, cool. So now, of course, once we hover over the trash can and click on it, then we want that turret to disappear. And right now, the trash can broadcasts this remove turret message, but right now it doesn't do anything. So to make it actually remove the turret, let's go inside of the turret sprite, and let's drag a when I receive remove turret, so over here. Then I'm going to create a new block and call this something like remove turret. So this is just to make everything a bit more organized. So click OK. And now inside of this remove turret block, let's first drag this remove turret block after this when I receive remove turret. And in this custom block, we want to pretty much cancel all of the variables that were created when the turret was clicked on. So let's see. When the turret was bought over here, as you can see, it set this mouse action variable and dragon turret on map variable and all of this stuff. And we want to reset those variables. So inside of the remove turret, let's first set mouse action to none. So set it to none. And we also want to set selected turret number to 0 because that means no turrets are currently being selected. And back in the by turret block, it also added its view radius to the turret view radius list. And we don't want that anymore. So we want to actually go to lists and then delete that item from the turret view radius list. So we want to delete selected turret number of turret view radius. All right. And also, this is very important. You want to put this delete right before setting selected turret number to 0. All right. And I'm going to duplicate this block and also delete the selected turret number of turret X and also turret Y. Okay. And again, make sure to do all of this before setting selected turret number to 0. All right. And I also want to set dragging turret on map to no, because we did set it to yes when the turret was being purchased. Okay. And now everything else should be okay. And lastly, we want to go to control and delete that turret clone. Okay. And one more thing we have to do is to also check if the turret is currently being selected, because we don't want to remove all the turrets on the screen if we just trash one turret. So let's go to control, grab an if, put this around the remove turret block, and check if mouse action is equal to selected. All right, so let's try it out. And if we buy a turret and then hover over this trash can and click on it, then as you can see, the turret head disappears. And right now, the base does not disappear yet because we didn't do anything to the turret base sprite, which we're going to do right now. So inside of the base sprite, let's go to events and drag a when I receive, remove turret. Then we want to do pretty much the same thing we did in the turret sprite, or the turret head, which was if mouse action is equal to selected, then delete itself. So let's go to control, grab an if, and we have one right here. So duplicate if mouse action equal to selected. Then we also want to reset any variables in here. So we want to set the mouse action to none. So let's duplicate this, put this inside of the if, and lastly, delete this clone. All right. And we also want this same code in the turret collider and place turret collider sprites. So let's just drag this inside of the turret collider. I'm going to move it over here and drag this inside of the place turret collider. All right. So for the place turret collider, this should be fine. And in the turret collider, we want to set can place tower to no once it's removed. So in the variables, let's set can place tower to no. And all right, so let's try it out. And if we trash a turret, then as you can see, the entire turret is removed. All right, cool. And if we have one already on the screen, then the one on the screen should not disappear like so. All right, let's try it again. So if we have like a laser, for example, and then trash the basic one, then the laser still works. So let's try like 2 of these turrets on here and then trash this one. All right, and they should still all work. Okay. And yeah. So now we want the player to get their money back once the turret is trashed, because the player isn't actually placing down the turret. So to do so, we have to go inside of the turret sprite. And once the turret is removed, we want to go to variables and change the cache by whatever value is in this turret costs list. So to do that, we have to grab an item number of block and grab the turret type variable and do item number of turret type in turret types, and then go to lists again and grab an item of block and drag this item number of block inside of this item of block and change the item of block to turret costs. So this should read item number of turret type in turret types of turret costs. And this sounds sort of confusing, but pretty much what this does is that it gets the item number of whatever turret type it is. So for example, if it's laser, it gets 3. and then it just gets the third item of the turret costs list. So it just refunds 150. Okay, so let's drag this block inside of the change cache by variable, and let's drag this right before the delete this clone. All right, so if we try it out, then if we trash a turret, then as you can see, our money is refunded. All right, cool. Now we have a working trash can feature for turrets. All right, so now the next thing I want to work on is the layering, because right now, as you can see, there are some issues with some sprites not being behind other sprites. So to fix this, I want to reorganize all of the layers in these sprites. So let's start with the turret sprite. So currently we have this go to front and then go backwards 5 layers for all of the turrets. However, the layering system in Scratch is a bit weird, especially with clones, because every time a new clone is created, and even if new variables are created, then it adds more layers. So over time, the layers become a bit weird if there's a lot of new clones created. So to prevent this problem, we have to create a new variable, and I'll call this something like turret layers, and then click OK. And when the flag is clicked, I am going to set turret layers to 0. So set it to 0. All right. And when a clone is created, let's change turret layers by, let's say 10, just to play it safe. And then I'm actually going to put this go to front layer and go backwards right before the forever loop. And I'm going to go to operators, grab a plus, and go to variables, grab the turret layers variable, and put this on the right side, and put 5 on the left side, and drag this back. So pretty much what this does is that every time a turret clone is created, it goes back even more layers, and that way it won't do any weird things like go in front of the shop. And before we try this out, I want to edit the layers of all of these sprites just to make sure that everything is working properly. So let's start with the enemy sprite. Let's check where it changes layers. Okay, right over here. And I think that should be fine. Okay, let's check the line sprite. There is no layering in here. So the next one, the turret range sprite. And for this one, we have to add the turret layers variable to it because it's a part of the turret. So let's go to operators, grab a plus operator, go to variables, grab the turret layers variable, and let's type in 10 on the left side, and then drag this entire thing inside of the go backwards layer block. All right, now let's go to the base sprite. And again, we have to add the turret layers variable to it because the base is a part of the turret. So let's go to operators and then variables, grab turret layers and add 7 to it. Okay. And now in the turret collider sprite, we should actually be fine because it goes to the front layer. So that's okay. And for the place turret collider, it also goes to the front layer. So that's fine also. Now let's check the layering for the track sprite. That's fine because it goes to the back layer. And for the screen background, that looks fine. Start wave, it should go to front all the time. And it does not seem to. So let's drag a go to front layer before the forever loop. Now let's go to the wave text sprite. And let's grab a go to front layer when the flag is clicked. So right over here. All right. Now for the wave number sprite, let's make it go to the front layer. So grab a go to front layer when the clone is created. And for the cache counter sprite, let's do the same thing. Okay. Now for the shop button sprite, let's also make it go to the front layer. So let's drag this inside of the forever loop. And in the shop screen sprite, this should be okay, but I think let's go to control and grab a forever loop and put this around this go to front layer and go backwards 4 layers. And this just prevents the turret sprites from being in front of this shop screen sprite. And now let's go to the turret icon. And we want these icons to go in front of the shop screen. So this is fine. And turret description. Go to front layer. Okay. and laser sprite. Okay, so since the laser is shot out from the turret, that is technically a part of the turret. So we want to make sure to add the turret layers variable to it. So plus turret layers and type in 20. Okay. And oh yeah, so we also want to go to looks and drag a go to front right before the go backwards layers. I think I may have forgotten to do that. Now lives counter. Let's also make it go to front. So drag a go to front when the clone is created. Okay. And game over sprite. That's fine. And trash can. That's also fine. All right. So now the layers should be a bit better. So let's try it out. And okay, everything seems to be layered properly. And the turret seems to be okay. And as you can see, the shop screen is over the turret. And let's try placing multiple. Okay. Everything seems to be fine. And yeah. All right. And now I want to fix some bugs with the turret placing, because sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes the turrets can be placed on the track. So to fix this, let's go inside of the turret range sprite. And inside of this if selected turret number equal to 0, I actually want to go to control and change it into an if, and go to operators and check if not selected turret number equal to 0, then show and go to XY, and just take out this hide and drag this inside of the else. And I want to add a message, so go to events, when I receive, place turret, then I want this turret range sprite to hide. All right, so now everything should be fine. And, oh, okay, so it seems like the turret range is actually still here after the turret is removed, as you can see with this little white circle. So we also actually want to grab a when I receive, remove turret, then we also want to hide it, so hide. All right, and that should be fine. So if we trash a turret, then there is no turret range sprite. And also in the turret collider sprite, I want to add another check inside of here where it places a turret. So I also want to duplicate this if statement and just have the if can place tower equal to yes, and put it right over the stuff after the wait until not mouse down. And this should fix any bug with the turret placing. All right. And the last bug I want to fix is in the shop. And that's where if I hold my mouse down and hover over these, then the cache becomes a bit weird and the turret placed is also wrong. So to fix this, let's go inside of the turret icon sprite. And instead of all of this in the if touching mouse pointer, let's take this out. And I only want these first two blocks. So replace item of and set brightness to. And for this part, let's drag another when I receive open shop. So when I receive open shop, then let's drag a forever loop and have everything in here. And then I'm going to grab an if, put it around everything, and check if the shop description of that turret icon is equal to show. So let's go to variables and then go to lists. And I want to check if item shop icon clone number of shop description is equal to show. Then check all of this mouse down stuff. And right around all of these blocks, I want to check again if the shop icon clone number of shop description is equal to show, just to make sure. And now everything should work for the shop. As you can see, I'm holding down my mouse pointer, but I can only select one, and it selects the correct one. Oh yeah, also, we want to check if is original sprite is equal to no. So if is original sprite equal to no, and I will drag this mouse down on the left and put this back. So pretty much all of the bugs now are fixed. And the last feature I want to add is infinite waves. because right now there are only 7 waves for the enemies, and I want to make the game go on forever. So to do so, let's go inside of the enemy sprite, and I'm going to create a new variable and call this something like begin endless waves, and then click OK. And when the flag is clicked, let's set it to no. All right, and until your last wave, let's drag begin endless wave to yes. So now I want to go inside of the when I receive new wave message in the enemy, and I'm going to go to control, grab an if, and check if begin endless wave is equal to yes. Then I am going to pretty much copy one of these waves, so duplicate, take everything out, and I'll just wait 0.1 seconds and spawn enemy normal. I'll just spawn all 3 enemies that I have, so like spawn enemy normal, spawn enemy fast, spawn enemy strong, and then set done spawning to yes. And to make it a bit random, I am going to go to variables, grab the wave variable, and I'll go to operators, grab the multiplication operator, drag the wave on the left, and grab a pick random operator, put it on the right, and I'll pick random something like 1.2 to 1.5. And just to make sure that all the numbers are whole numbers, let's also round it. So grab a round and put this inside of the round. All right, and I'll put this inside of the second, or actually the first number of these custom blocks. And I will also duplicate them like so. All right, and now we have a random amount of enemies that spawn in the endless waves. And if we want the enemies to also become stronger every number of waves, we can go inside of the script where we create the enemies. So this is the custom block spawn enemy. We can grab the wave variable, and let's go to operators, grab a divided by operator this time. And if I want to, let's say, increase the enemy's health by 1 every 10 waves, then I'm going to divide by 10, and then I'm going to go to operators and grab the absolute of block and change this to floor. So pretty much what floor does is that it ignores all decimals. So floor of wave over 10. And lastly, I'll just grab the plus operator, drag this on the right side, and add the current enemy health on the left. So this one was 3, so I'll type in 3. And then I'll right click duplicate. And for the fast ones, I have 2, so I'll type in 2. And for the strong ones, I have 5, so I'll type in 5. All right, so now the enemies should increase by 1 health every 10 waves. And all right, so pretty much everything is completed. And now we can do some playtesting. So I'll go to my project page and start the game. So we start with 200 cash and 20 lives. And I'll just place down some turrets. So I'll start with the laser. And the trash can also works for canceling turret purchases, like so. Okay, and let's start the game. All right, this is wave 1. Let's try wave 2. Okay. Wave 3. All right, I'll save up for a double turret. Okay, I'll buy a double turret somewhere over here. Wave 4 and wave 5. I'll buy one more double turret. All right. Wave 6. And right now I only have 7 custom waves, but since we added the infinite wave option, we now have infinite waves. So that's pretty cool. So this is the 7th wave. And now the 8th wave, or the next one, should be randomly generated. So this is wave 8 with our random amount of enemies. All right. So now let's restart and try losing. So we have 20 lives. And let's just try losing a few lives. So once the enemies reach the end of the track, then our lives decrease, like so. Alright. And once our lives reach 0, then a game over screen shows up, like so. Alright, cool. Anyways, that's it for this video and for this entire series. If you enjoyed it, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe too, if you haven't already. This project is shared on my Scratch profile, so feel free to check it out. Link is in the description below. Also, let me know in the comments what tutorial series you want to see next. Anyways, that's it for this video. See ya!